Divers and people who spend a lot of time underwater, what's the creepiest / most unexplainable thing you've seen while in the depths? I'm a commercial diver and was once on a job cleaning a potable water reservoir. I'd been in other reservoirs before, but this was by far the biggest. At 40 x 80 meters to get in you had to open a hatch in the ground and climb down a ladder. The hatch was in a corner, so when you were in the far corner of the reservoir, it was completely pitch black, and you just had to hope your light didn't go out. I was about halfway through a 3-hour dive when the batteries in my torch started going flat. I watched the beam get narrower and dimmer until it cut out completely. It's not a huge problem if you lose light, as you can just follow your umbilical back to the hatch. Just as I started walking back, some obnoxiously loud banging started somewhere in the reservoir. I was the only diver in there, so it both confused and scared the shit out of me. Needless to say, I ran back to the hatch as fast as I could. I ended up getting my torch changed out and doing another hour in the water but didn't hear the noise again. I still have no idea what it was, but the combination of my torch going out and loud banging coming from somewhere gave me a hell of a fright. I've done a number of dives, and the strangest thing I ever saw was a large deep freezer with a heavy industrial chain wrapped around multiple times with about 5 cinder blocks attached. It was very rusted and the deep freezer itself had to have been 30+ years old, probably more. This was about 90 feet deep just off Vancouver Island, Canada. The situation gave myself and the other divers the heebie-jeebies. Logged the GPS and depth coordinates and notified the police. We were able to find out what was inside, since one of the divers had friends with local police. 10 porcelain dolls. You can dive into man-made lakes and check out what's left of old flooded homes and communities. It's pretty dark and spooky down there no matter what, especially when you think of all the big fish swimming around that are barely silhouettes until they're close. My buddy likes to dive in lakes. He said the creepiest thing, by far, is finding cemeteries 100 feet plus beneath the water in the dark, eerie quiet. Day 4 edit, I asked him about big fish. He said there's definitely shit down there bigger than he expected, 4 or 5 feet. They're attracted to the lights and noise but watch from a distance, which is nonetheless disconcerting, just dark, 2D shapes drifting nearby. I dive myself but heard the story from a Garda diver. In 2010 a man took a test drive in a car with the salesman and in a suicide attempt he drove the car off the pier into the sea and drowned. The salesman managed to escape by breaking the window and swimming to the surface. The divers were dispatched to retrieve the other man's body. Simply through working in marinas at the time I was able to be part of the conversation with the diver in question. When he got to the car, he said, the man was still facing forward, hands on the steering wheel, eyes wide. He'd been there a couple of hours now. Where it gets creepy is when the diver opened the driver door. This combined with the smashed window caused the currents to flow through the car and the man's wide-eyed head turned around slowly with the force of it to face the diver. Not unexplainable, but gave a bit of a fright. I worked as a commercial diver for about 7 years in the UK and also some work in Europe. I was working in Orkney, north of Scotland, on the fish farms. One time I swam down one of the bigger nets off Rousay and it was very dark, very overgrown, and I could see some weird shapes lying in the dead man's sock as I descended. There were a few more dead fish than usual, maybe 100 or so, but underneath them were lying 3 dead seals. Big ones. It was hard to make out because they were covered in fish but one of the seals had a big fucking chunk of it missing. And that's when I looked up and saw a 4-foot tear in the side of the net. Fuck that. I was only a newbie at this point. Fish farm work is generally the best way to start a diving career, doesn't pay the best but you get plenty of minutes logged which helps for the experience. I told the supervisor who said get out straight away. They sent one of the more experienced lads in after me and he fixed the hole sharpish and then rigged the seals up to be lifted out. Turns out the seals had been killed by orca and somehow got through the net in a panic. Orca are quite common up in Orkney and are the only animal we were told you had to get out the water for if seen. Only one of the seals had a bite mark, the other two got caught in the net. Not supernatural or anything, but I remember a significant shiver running down my spine that day. Edit, whoa. More responses than I've ever had on a post. To answer the question about why orcas, I was told by one of the marine environment lads who used to regularly come out on the boats with us, that it's a precautionary thing. Wearing black neoprene and fins, you may be mistaken for a seal and become breakfast. To be fair, it's a precaution I was very happy to go along with. We don't get great whites or tiger sharks up here, but I'd imagine in South Africa, India, Australia, etc. there would be similar rules. I used to do a lot of night dives hunting for lobster off the coast of California. We'd start at 9 or 10 at night, so everything is obviously pitch black besides where we were pointing our lights. Every so often I'd get this unshakable feeling that something big was watching or following me. Sometimes I could quiet that part of my brain and continue with the dive. Other times I couldn't shake the feeling and would end the dive after a few minutes. It's a hard feeling to describe, but I guess I'd compare it to being in a haunted house but 50 feet underwater in complete darkness. When living off the coast, some buddies and I would take regular fishing trips out to the oil rigs. We would always have some lines out and a few would dive down and try to spear some mangrove snapper or cobia. Once while I and two others were diving down checking out the structure, we decided we needed to move due to lack of life around the rig. We all get back in the boat and as one of my buddies is reeling in a line, we had a red snapper baited on. An easily 8 to 10 feet tiger shark starts chewing on it right behind the prop, so close I could have poked his eye out. The idea that a massive animal was in the water so close to me and two of my friends but no one saw it is terrifying. I bet he was watching us the whole time. I got told a story once by a Maori language teacher of mine during my time at high school. We didn't learn much Maori, just listened to stories. A dam in the Waikato, New Zealand had begun to have visible cracks in the concrete on the outside part of the dam. Some divers were organized to dive down and check the inside submerged part of the dam for damage on that side. While they were down there, there was the usual debris you would find behind a man-made wall which prevents the water from flowing as it would normally do if there wasn't a dam there. Turns out what they thought were large logs were in fact huge eels that had gotten to the size of logs due to being prevented from migrating to the sea, where they breed and die. So from being prevented from doing their natural life duties, they just get larger and larger. That would be creepy, seeing eels deep down in the water just floating around. The story isn't really mine, but from a friend of mine who does night dives. Here on the Brazilian coast, there's a fish that resembles a shark, but it's considerably smaller, called cacao. You have to hunt these fuckers at night because they're sort of nasty in the open, but easier to shoot when in their coves. So, my friend, let's call him Regis. He is about 1 kilometer from the coast, diving near a reef. This thing is massive and you have to go really deep to get to the slope with the coves. He is descending with a partner using cylinders for oxygen and armed with a harpoon gun, the kind that shoots the harpoon and is reloadable, which is kinda heavy, making movement a tad slower. It's super dark at the deep during the night and much light will alert the fish they're hunting, so they have to use flashlights that are weaker. Regis said he had a feeling while descending, everything was off, the smaller fish were absent, there were no turtles, water was murkier than the usual. His partner stays back with the flashlight and he goes closer to the reef. Regis searches for the coves but can't find any with the cacao he wants, so it takes kinda long. At a certain point, he feels a shift in the water, like something big is swimming near him, just as the weak light from his partner waves frantically and goes off. He doesn't know what to expect and goes on flight or fight mode, except he can't ascend too fast. He then tries to stay at the same level, but he has his back to the reef now. Then cocks the gun with the harpoon and waits. Waits and waits, but he doesn't see anything in the murky night sea water, not even his partner's light. That had to mean one of two things: either his partner went out of batteries, or he saw something and didn't want to attract its attention. Regis finally decides to start ascending very slowly. The weird feeling he had got worse and turned into chills. As he's going up, he feels that same shift again and does not hesitate to harpoon whatever it was, but missed. He said he never saw something so big underwater and it swam fast. As Regis couldn't see much in the dark, he couldn't make out a proper shape but saw that the thing went deeper near the reef. So he tries to go up as fast as possible and makes out to the boat, where his partner helped him up. Turns out his partner warned him about it with the light, because he saw something abnormally big swimming in a dangerous distance, but couldn't get to him, because he felt watched by the thing. They both call it the blackfish since they couldn't really see what it was. It's said to be as big as a man, about 1.7 m. Regis lost the harpoon in the end. Both of them still dive at night. It's a no-no for me, though. Also, always dive in groups, guys. If something happens, you gotta have someone to have your back. You never know. An old World War II ammunition ship off the south coast of England was full of brass-topped shells. Most had been taken by divers over the years and it was now very rare to see them, apart from a pile in one corner of the ship. This pile of shiny brass metals was miraculously untouched and remarkably clean after spending years underwater, and you only found out why if you swam near them. Out of the murky darkness, the largest eel I have ever seen snakes forward. Without exaggeration, this thing had a head the same size as a horse's head, full of jagged teeth. I could not see the body as it looped into the dark and deeper into the ship. No one got near those shells. Turns out for years this thing had been guarding the shiny brass shells, slithering over them making them shine. We found out at the bar later that he was famous in the area and many people went to the wreck just to see him. No idea why this giant creature was guarding them like a dragon and its horde, but some said eels are like magpies and like shiny things.